course this is going to happen. Of course they're going to bring games to other people. Like, I don't know. Part of me just almost doesn't care, like, in a way. Like I want games to be in more places, but I don't know, them bringing games to other places, yeah, it just doesn't surprise me at all.
Lono brought up a good point. Oh, go ahead, Kurt.
No, you're fine.
Okay,
that's fine.
Well, because like the point that Lono brought up about hardware, I think is really where I want to get everybody's thoughts now, because I argue that they aren't getting out of hardware, but here's the real thing. What does that even mean? The biggest technical leap, right? Like, one of the things that I've seen Lono rant about, rightfully so, is the marketing behind the Series X and S. And I've even pushed back on some of those points, saying, like, it's also, I feel like PlayStation 5. Like, when we saw 3 years into this generation that frames per second go from 60 to 30, like, it really kind of feels like what's going on here, right? We were like, 60 frames is so good. And some people will be like, 30 frames is fine. It's like, no, like, this is what they were really pushing, more Microsoft than anybody else this generation. 60 frames, 120 frames. This is 4K, and I'm not going to sit here and expect that a console at $500 is going to do what my, computer can do at 5,000. I don't have that disillusion that I see some people like make, but when it comes down to marketing, that felt more marketing to me than anything else, because they weren't then ready to kind of tell us more. It's the biggest leap in technology. That, to me, as somebody who thinks on the technology side, I go, that to me sounds more like they're investing in their cloud infrastructure, which is what Satya Nadella has continued to say, that this is a cloud. We're a cloud company. Xbox is going to be cloud. What do y'all think?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If they played some kind of verbiage trick and it's not about the hardware being really strong, because that's what got my attention. I was like, oh, she said biggest leap. I'd have to go back and look at the exact verbiage, because
that's what she said.
If it's the cloud hybrid and that's what they view as the biggest leap, because they're going to be able to give you like 4K cloud gaming, oh my, no.
Yeah. Because think about it, Lono. This is this 2 generations, right? Last generation, this generation, they've had the world's most powerful console. How has that helped them at all in the gaming space? When PlayStation has the better looking games, the better running version of the multiplayer, it hasn't really returned the dividends. And if she's saying, right, like, you think she's saying they're going to make another world's most powerful console, that's going to fall on deaf ears. Nobody's going to pay attention to that, because you've had the world's most powerful console for the last 2 generations.
Unless it's like $800, then I might believe them. Like, if it's egregiously priced, then I might actually believe them.
You know what? And guess what? And then they could drop another Xbox Series S type device alongside that, which will leave them in the same situation that they are now, right? And so,
Ginger and I got into that debate. I can't remember if it was on an Epic Loot Radio, or if we were just in the comments on one of our videos or whatever. But yeah, I was saying that I think that they need to drop an $800 high-end console that vastly outperforms and costs $100, $200 more than the PlayStation to sort of provide that value proposition. I don't think that they can compete in the same lane as PlayStation. They need to make a device that is high-end, that is closer to a PC for the people that want that, because otherwise, in terms of native hardware that runs native games, like, what are you offering me as a console maker that I can't get from the other guys? And if you say Game Pass, PlayStation Plus is getting better every day.
It is.
It's getting better every single day.
It's a little bit confusing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, J-Dub.
I was just going to say just these 2 points. When you think of power, Xbox right now has 12 T-flops of power. It's the world's most powerful console. But then when you look at the games that really make your jaw drop, you look at Horizon Burning Shores. You look at, we just had Death Stranding 2 that everybody was gawking over, right? That's running on the PS5, right? Which is a 9 to 10 T-flop system. So people gawk over those games. They don't gawk over the 12 T-flop games, right? Because the games that generally Xbox shows us, like Hellblade, it looks good. It looks great. But I mean, it's 12 T-flops, and it doesn't really show off the power of the 12 T-flops. And we know it's probably going to get hamstrung like the rest of the games because of the Series S.
I would push back on that. I think Hellblade looks about as good as any video game has ever looked.
According to Digital Foundry, it doesn't.
I I think it's good to take a step back though and to say that this current generation PS5 and Series X, they're struggling hand in hand too. And there's something to say about that as well. Where the PS5, there was news from Sony just the other day that they're already viewing the PS5 near the end of its cycle, which I don't know what that means at all. But there's something
That was an
middle,
incorrect
I
quote.
think,
That was an
middle.
incorrect quote.
That's not
That
what
was
they
the
said.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that was
okay.
it was the middle because it's
Middle.
we're 4 years into this generation, and generally
Right.
Okay.
generations last between
It's
6
just
to
it's
7
just
years.
factually.
It was a
Wait,
misquote.
is it 4? Is it 4 years? I
We're
thought it's
coming up
only
on
been
4.
3.
At
It's
the
been
end of this
3.
year.
Well, it's
at the end of
2024.
Yeah,
this year.
so
That's
that's
yeah,
3
yeah.
years, Lodo.
Well,
Yeah.
going
no, no,
into
no,
Like
no,
if
well,
at the
no.
end of this year it's 4 years, that means it's been 3 years. We're at the
Yeah.
beginning of a year. That's
I
how
was ref-
years work.
Right. I
I'm
know,
sh-
I know.
I'm crapping on J Dub, not you,
Yeah,
Lono.
it depends on the generations, right? A typical generation would be anywhere between 5 to 6 years would be typical, right? But
Yeah.
if we go back in the 360 and the PS3 era, though, it lasted a little bit longer, and I mean,
It
just
depends on the success of the console, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and think
then
about
we had COVID, and then we had COVID. That
Yeah.
ultimately, I believe this generation should extend 3 years because those first 3 years, I mean, there was lack of supply, and developers got hamstrung. So I don't know. I don't know. You know, we know. You know, 9 times 10, we got a PS5 Pro coming. We got a Switch 2 coming this generation. We got a Xbox Series X all digital coming. Like, I don't know. Will these things extend the generation into 2028, 2029, perhaps 2030? I don't know.
And
The-
I think that's important, right? Because again, if the PS5 they admitted sales are struggling, they didn't hit their mark, they're kind of disappointed in it, and I just think that says something about the overall gamers' appetite for what we're getting now from these two players. There isn't a lot of innovation, right? And to your point, Kirk, about having an $800 premium console, I think that'd be a horrible idea for Xbox because those people are going to go buy a PC instead,
Right.
and it makes no sense because the console business is so small too, right? They're much better on creating an ecosystem where they can sell their games on PC and all kinds of other devices. Where that device, I mean, it'd be cool as a tech guy myself. I'd love to have it. But
I mean,
just think it would make no business
there's too
sense.
many people that went out and bought an ROG Ally for me to think that
Yeah.
to agree with you. I don't agree with you. I think if they make a high
Well, there's only
powered
3.
console,
There's only about 3 million between the ROG Ally, the Steam Deck, and the Lenovo.
well, yeah, but then
That would be
you
a
don't
failure.
need to make a bunch of them.
You
Yeah,
still
but are
need-
you gonna sink all the R&D? You know, $1 billion
Exactly.
worth of R&D just to sell 2 million units?
to that point, would you rather do that, or would you rather have other manufacturers take that risk for you and you just put
Right.
Game Pass on there? And again, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing already.
Yeah.
I
But
see
but
exactly
one
what
thing
they're
I want to return to Mark about the comparisons between the two in this generation and struggling. Yes, they are struggling as far as
It's so funny.
w-
54
okay.
million is like, oh man, that is
it's not
struggling.
that's
Like, man,
and
I'd kill to sell 4
it's
million
not
of
struggling.
anything.
Yeah. So Sony, PlayStation, by any chance of any stretch of the imagination, is not struggling at all, right? They are. Matter of fact, what happened is they projected, which was far exceedingly. They were too. I guess they were too. I guess they got a little bit too greedy, and
Sure.
they thought, and they set their projections extremely high, which was 25 million units sold in 2023, and they ended up selling, I think, 23 units. So they're going to miss their projections by 2 million. But the problem is, I mean, which is, I guess, a good problem to have, is that is still far exceedingly more than any PlayStation has ever in history.
Yeah.
That is, matter of fact, they sold more units last year in 2023 than Xbox did the entire generation. That tells you how good they're doing. But again, you know, it just like Square Enix, right? They're never happy, even though the game sells 15 million copies, because their projections are just too high, and they just believe that their product is just so good, and they need to do double that. So that's an internal thing.
Yeah.
PlayStation doesn't have an issue selling hardware, whereas Microsoft does. They were selling the Xbox Series S for $139 this holiday. They were selling the Series X for $349, right? They basically cut the price in half, and they still weren't able to win NPD. They still weren't able to sell out of the consoles, and so that's a big struggle. And the problem is, if you don't have great games, high quality games, and consistently, then people won't buy into your console. But they need people to buy the hardware so they can get the revenue to keep making the game. So it's the chicken versus the egg for Xbox. And I don't know if they'll ever be able to.
No, they sell the hardware at a loss.